In the first video of this series, we answered the question, what is a Mastiff? This week, we are tackling everyone's favorite subject, money. Just how much does a Mastiff cost? From the average purchase price to healthcare costs, to how much it costs to feed one of these giant guardians, today we get into the numbers, the hard facts about the costs of Mastiff ownership. If you are someone who enjoys real-world data and original research, this is the video for you. And as a bonus, throughout this video, I will be sharing with you my own financial records so you can see just how much I spend on Junior and Sully for things like vet expenses and food. If you are new here, my name is Stephanie, aka Big Dog Mom. And on this channel, I provide information and resources to help you and your big dog live your best life together. So if you're interested in learning just how much a Mastiff costs, get your pen and paper and calculator ready, and let's dive in. If you are considering bringing a Mastiff into your home, your first question is likely, how much does a Mastiff cost? You may be enamored by the size and allure of this giant guardian, but can you afford to raise and care for an English Mastiff for 8+ years? That is the question we wrestle with today. And so in order to provide you the most up-to-date data on the price of an English Mastiff, I surveyed the Big Dog Mom community of Mastiff breeders and owners. According to 55 Mastiff owners and 34 Mastiff breeders, the purchase price of a Mastiff is dependent on whether or not you want a show prospect puppy or a pet. Keep in mind, I am not including in this analysis the cost of a Mastiff if you go through a rescue. The topic of Mastiff rescue was addressed in my last blog post, linked below in the description. So these data today are exclusive to the purchase price from a reputable preservation dog breeder. I want to make that clear from the beginning. Okay, so as you can see from the results of this survey, the average price for a show prospect Mastiff puppy is $3,000, while the average price for a Mastiff puppy sold on a limited registration or a pet is $2,250. Both of these numbers are right in line with how much I paid for both Junior and Sully. This is according to Mastiff breeders. On the other hand, the average Mastiff price is slightly lower according to dog owners at $2,070. Purchase prices in this group ranged from $500 to $4,000 for a Mastiff puppy. Additionally, be aware that most Mastiff breeders will require a deposit to hold your puppy. This deposit is then subtracted from the total price when the final payment is made when you pick up your new puppy. For example, if the price of your Mastiff puppy is $2,500 and you pay a $500 deposit, you will be responsible for the $2,000 balance when you pick up your puppy at 10 weeks old. Okay, back to the data. According to the Mastiff breeders in my survey, 37% require a non-refundable deposit to hold a puppy, while 63% said their deposits are refundable. Refundable meaning that if for some reason you decide against getting one of their puppies, the deposit will be returned. Deposit amounts ranged in this survey group from $250 to $500, with the average right around $400. As a personal aside, I feel compelled to address the ethics behind non-refundable deposits. This has always been a huge red flag for me. While I certainly understand breeders who feel they must require permanent skin in the game for their puppies, I see no valid reason to make these deposits non-refundable. There are a myriad of reasons a family might back out of getting a puppy. Moving, losing a job or other means of financial security, getting pregnant and expecting a new baby at the same time, or even simply deciding they aren't ready to be Mastiff owners. Again, there are a myriad of valid reasons to opt out of getting a Mastiff puppy. The last thing any one of us wants or needs is a puppy placed in a family not ready for the responsibility, moving forward purely out of obligation and a desire to not have just wasted $500. If the deposit is refundable, everyone wins. The puppy is placed in a better home, and the unfit or unprepared buyer moves on. No harm, no foul. Most great dog breeders I know prioritize the health and welfare of their puppies over any potential profit they might make in deposits, and therefore make their deposits refundable. Okay, let's move on. Now that we've covered Mastiff price, let's talk about the next biggest expense you will have as a dog owner: healthcare. Despite how many times I'm asked how much my Mastiffs eat or poop, the one question I'm never asked is, what is the cost for veterinary care of a Mastiff? Veterinary medicine isn't sexy, but it is expensive. Healthcare expenses for a Mastiff, even a healthy one, dwarf that of most other breeds of dog. To give you some concrete numbers for this category, I pulled every veterinary invoice I saved from the last 5 years with Junior and Sully. While I know I shredded a few in the last 5 years, this data will provide a conservative estimate of the overall cost of healthcare for an English Mastiff. A few things to keep in mind. First, these numbers do not include everything. Like I said, I shredded a few and I was unable to locate a few, so keep that in mind. Second, I do not have pet insurance. More on that later in this video. And lastly, these expenses do not include any of our prescription medications. Prescriptions for us are a monthly recurring cost that fluctuates a little bit depending on prices and needs of my dogs. They include things like Junior's daily pain medications, the occasional antibiotic, and Sully's eye drops. In total, I spend approximately $30 to $60 per month for pet medications. There is a link below for how I save money on pet meds, so check that out at the conclusion of this video. Okay, let's get into the numbers. The data shared here are for 2 of the last 5 years, 2019 and 2020. I used these 2 years so they would match up with the food expenses we will cover in the next segment. This way, you can see all of the veterinary and food costs for the same year for each dog. As always, all of this information and much more are contained in the full blog post linked below this video. Feel free to take notes, but you really don't have to. Just watch right now and head to bigdogmom.com at the end of the video. Okay. As you can see here, healthcare costs for Junior in 2019 came in just under $3,000 and $280 for Sully. In 2020, Junior's veterinary expenses fell to a little over $1,000, while Sully's increased to $569. As you can see in the notes here, both of my Mastiffs underwent more than one major procedure in the last 5 years. So while you might look at the expenses for Sully, who is a very healthy Mastiff overall, and think he is super cheap, keep in mind that his neuter in 2016 cost 4 times as much as a normal neuter because he was born cryptorchid, which just means that he was born with a retained testicle. More on that another day. Also, not included for Sully was his tooth extraction this year in January that cost $755. I discussed that in my life update video. Okay, moving on. As many of you know, Junior was diagnosed with Wobbler syndrome in 2018. Wobbler syndrome is a progressive neurological disease seen in Mastiffs, Great Danes, and Doberman Pinschers, among other breeds. I will throw a card up top to one of my Wobblers videos. I have a couple of them on this channel, so if you're interested in learning more about that, I'll put the links in the description as well. In any event, for the better part of about 4 months, he and I frequented the vet for his unexplained neck pain. This ultimately resulted in us being sent to the local veterinary neurological center for an MRI. This was by far the single most expensive procedure we've encountered to date at $3,323 for the visit. That's the MRI plus the x-rays and the exam. Also in 2018, Junior tested positive for valley fever, an endemic fungal infection in Arizona. The medications for treating valley fever, fluconazole and itraconazole, are obscenely expensive. Thankfully, I was able to get his meds down to about $150 a month for about 6 months. And finally, in 2020, after what presented like an acute knee injury while out playing, Junior was diagnosed with bilateral hip dysplasia. The x-rays and exam for this diagnosis cost $545. Okay, so why do I share all of this? Because if you are considering buying a Mastiff, you need to know. The health and welfare of your Mastiff is your financial responsibility from the moment you pick up your puppy until he takes his last breath as a senior. If you feel like any of what I have shared so far would cause major financial hardship for you or your family, you are not ready to bring a Mastiff home. Keep in mind, however, that some of our expenses were related to our location in Arizona. Both valley fever and the thorn in Junior's toe were more or less caused by living where we did in the desert. Secondly, we lived in an area of the valley where prices are unnecessarily high for the service you get. That is not to say I didn't like my vets there, but I do feel for most things we were overcharged compared to other areas of the country. My advice is to shop around and be willing to drive to a great vet who can help you keep veterinary expenses down. And based on my personal experience, Do not feel compelled to stay with a vet you know is not the right fit for you or your dog. A great many vets have little to no experience with Mastiffs, so you will want to do your research ahead of time to find one that is. Okay, let's move on to everyone's favorite topic, food. How much does it cost to feed a Mastiff? One look at the giant Mastiff, and the first question in most people's mind is, how much do you feed that dog? People automatically assume that the bigger the dog, the more they eat. As we discussed in the first video of this series, this is a total myth. Unless your Mastiff is obese, size is about genetics, not food. As I explained in detail in my life update video, we switched Sully and Junior from a raw diet to kibble for the year 2020. However, in 2019, we fed a raw diet exclusively. I thought I would show you the dog food expenses for both years so you can see the cost difference between the two dietary options for a Mastiff. In 2019, the cost for feeding a raw diet to 2 adult Mastiffs was $1,931.57. Obviously, if you want the average annual cost to feed one Mastiff, simply divide that number by 2 to get $965.79. Okay, so that is for a raw diet. Now let's look at a kibble diet. Commercial dog food costs in the year 2020 for 2 adult Mastiffs was approximately $1,680. I fed mostly Signature brand at about $70 a bag. Again, divide that number by 2 and you get an average annual cost of $840 to feed a Mastiff per year. This is a conservative estimate as we often used more than 2 bags per month depending upon what kibble I was feeding at the time. So keep in mind, these costs do not include any extras like supplements, probiotics, or any of the necessary items you will need in order to feed your Mastiff, like dog bowls and plenty of drool cloths. So that is how much it costs to feed a Mastiff per year. Let's move on to all of the other costs of Mastiff ownership that you may not have considered. Beyond purchase price, dog food, and veterinary expenses, you will want to factor in all of the other items you will need as a Mastiff owner. As I prepared for this video and the blog post linked below, I listed out all of the costs associated with having 2 Mastiffs. In that process, it occurred to me one more way I can illustrate for you how much a Mastiff costs to raise and to care for. I asked myself, if I were choosing between a Mastiff and a French Bulldog, how much more would I be spending on the products needed for the giant dog? Let's answer that question for you with some more data. Here's the question. How much more do giant breed dogs cost versus small breed dogs? In this graph, you can see a list of the few essential items I use every day with my dogs. These include dog beds, crates, various dog toys, food bowls, and a harness. I looked up each of these items on Amazon and other retailers and recorded the price for a small version of the product and for an extra large size of the same product from the same retailer. I then calculated the percentage increase. For those who glaze over when you hear percentages, come back to me. The percent increase simply reflects the added cost for purchasing products for a Mastiff versus a small breed dog. So for just the items I looked at, you can expect to spend 82% more for the giant breed extra large size. You will definitely want to factor these added costs in if you are considering getting a Mastiff. In the blog post linked below, I go on to share my top 5 tips for saving money as a Mastiff owner. These are things I've learned from personal experience over the many decades with the breed. In all, my tips can save you several $100s a month, so please check them out at the end of this video. And for now, the bonus tip I mentioned earlier. If you get nothing else from this video, I want you to hear me on this last point. If you are considering a Mastiff, get pet insurance. Pet insurance is not just for those catastrophic events like a knee injury or unthinkable diagnosis like cancer or Wobbler syndrome no Mastiff owner wants to hear. Pet insurance plans out there cover a wide array of veterinary costs, from routine preventive care and diagnostic testing to prescription drugs. Trupanion and Embrace Pet Insurance are my top 2 recommendations for large and giant breed dog owners for a myriad of reasons I've discussed on BigDogMom.com. I highly recommend you get a free quote from both of these companies and select the one that is best for you. This is not a sponsored video, and I'm not being paid to say this. I just can't tell you how many times in the last 5 years I've wished I had pet insurance. Far, far, far too many to count. There are links to both insurance companies in the description below and more information about them in the blog post as well. Stay tuned for the next video in our series on the Mastiff when we tackle the messier, more humorous side of Mastiff ownership. We will answer the questions, do Mastiffs really drool that bad? And how much do Mastiffs shed? If you got value from this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing before you go. Don't forget to click the bell so you are notified when breaking big dog news happens. And with that, we will see you in our next video. Bye for now. Oh, it's gonna drop, it's gonna drop. Oh, got it. I got it, Junie. Oh, gross. Did you eat dirt? Did you eat dirt out there? That's disgusting, man. Okay, so just start it over. Oh, that was gross, Junie. Okay, ready?